12 learners, welcome to today's history lesson. My name is Dimpon Tlabati. This lesson is brought to you by the Northern Cape Department of Education in collaboration with Pagama Research and Development. So now historians, today we are focusing on a new topic which is known as a new world order, and the subtopic is globalization. So without any waste of time, let us just look at the focus of today's lesson. What is it that learners you are expected to know by the end of this lesson, which is also known as the lesson objectives. So learners, by the end of this lesson, you should be able to explain the concept globalization. So which simply means that you should be able to know what is globalization. But it should not only end there, you should also be able to explain the impact of globalization on different countries. To be specific, by different countries I mean the third world countries and the first world countries, which are also known as developing and developed countries. So now we will also be looking at the impact of globalization. Now, when we focus on the impact, we are not only going to focus on the negative impact, we will also be focusing or discussing the positive impact of globalization as well. So we'll look at both the positive and the negative impact of globalization. And all this is stipulated in the examination guideline, page 6. So basically in this lesson, we are addressing the first bullet point of the examination guideline, particularly for this topic, which says, what is globalization? So according to that bullet point, we need to fully discuss the concept globalization by explaining the meaning and also looking at the impact of globalization as well. So now moving on to the next slide, which is the pre-knowledge, which is what you already know. For those of you who are doing geography, you covered or learned about globalization in grade 11. So you should be familiar with the topic. So now, just to check your level of understanding, I want you to actually answer these two questions, just for us to be able to see how far are you with the understanding on globalization. Is there anything that you know regarding this topic? So the first question that I want you to answer is, based on what you know, what is globalization? And then the second one will be, name and explain different types of globalization. Now, just to give you a clue, based on the picture that you are seeing here, it says one world. So we are living in different countries, but one world. So based on my clue, I want you to answer these two questions. What do you understand by the concept or the term globalization? We are living in different countries, but one world. So you have 2 minutes to answer those two questions. What is globalization? And name and explain the different types of globalization. Welcome back, learners. Hope you had enough time to answer the two questions. Now let us go through the answers together. What is globalization? Globalization is the increasing connection and integration between people and countries across the world. So basically, it's just the connection and the integration and interdependence of people, countries, and countries across the world. It's all about sharing ideas, so meaning just one idea being able to be spread throughout or across the world. For example, even goods as well being shared or spread across the world, that is known as globalization. Hence, we are defining it as the increasing connection and interdependence or integration between people and countries around the world. So now let us look at the one that I have here on the board. It says it's the process of countries, not only just countries, learners, but people becoming more connected and working together. Remember that picture that I showed you in the previous slide, where I indicated that as much as we are living in different countries, but we still live in one world. So in that case, we are able to connect. We are able to work together. So now that connection, that working together is known as globalization. For example, when you look at the bottom part there, it says this means that goods, not just goods, services, ideas, and culture move easily between different countries. So basically it means that as much as we are living in different countries, but we are able to share goods. How do we share goods? Through trade. So now that sharing of goods is an indication that we are connected, we are able to work together, which is globalization. So it basically means that goods that are manufactured in one country can actually be shared or transported to different countries, which was known as globalization. We are connected through the sharing of goods. They are able to be shared and spread to different countries. So now not only goods, services as well. We are able to share services. So learners, we are also able to share ideas, which basically means that an idea of one country or that came up with one country can be able to spread to other countries as well. So that is one example of globalization. Now it doesn't end there. We are also able to share culture. So culture or different cultures are able to be spread and shared amongst different countries across the world. How people dress, the music that people listen. So for example, here in South Africa, we are able to listen to music or songs that were actually produced by artists from other countries. So this basically means that music can also be shared and spread across different countries across the world. So that is one example of globalization. So this point says, this means that goods, services, ideas, and culture move easily between different countries. So basically it means ideas or services or goods can be actually established or produced in one country and then be able to spread to other countries as well. Just because we are connected, we are able to work together. Countries in the world are able to connect. People in the world are able to connect. That is what we call globalization. We are actually interdependent. It means that countries depend on one another for economic or the global economic growth. That is one example of globalization. So when I talk about countries depending on one another, for example, when you go to a store to buy clothes, you'd find some of them written made in China, made in Swaziland. You are in South Africa, but you are able to buy products that are made or that were manufactured in other countries, which is what we call globalization. Goods are able to be shared and spread throughout the world or across the world, which is an example of globalization. So now the next question is name and explain different types of globalization. Now, learners, before we go to the next question, what you need to understand is that when we are connecting, the connection can either be economical, it can be either political, it can be cultural or technological as well. So now, basically, I've actually gave you answers for the second question to say, name the types of globalization. So we have what we call economic globalization, we have political globalization, we have cultural, and we also have technological. Hence, I'm saying to you that we can connect politically, we can be able to connect economically as well, we can be able to connect culturally as well, and technologically as well. So now those are the types of globalization. So that is your answer for question 2, to say, what are the types of globalization? We have economic globalization, which focuses more on the economic growth of different countries, which is made possible by trade or exchange of goods, whereby now goods or different countries are now exchanging goods and services. So now it says economic growth when countries trade with each other just to actually improve their economy or just to grow the economy. For example, a car made in China can be sold in South Africa. That is economic globalization. It has to do with the exchange of goods and services between countries. And then we have cultural globalization, which involves the spread of similar ideas, values, and cultures across the world. And I think I gave you an example of culture to say how people dress and what people eat, and also the music that they listen to. So those things are able to be spread and shared throughout the world or between different countries. So that is cultural globalization. Now, learners, we also have political globalization, which now focuses on the growing influence of international organizations and their agreements on the world. So now, one example will be the United Nations, which is also known as the UN. Now, I want you to take note of the name itself, the name of the organization. It's the UN, United Nations. Now, this is an organization that was established by leaders of different countries in order to maintain peace across the world. It was actually established after World War II. So basically, the main purpose of this organization, the headquarters is in New York. Now, the main purpose of this organization was to actually make sure that human rights are respected across the world, and at the same time, there is also peace around the world. So it basically means that leaders across the world wanted to make sure that what happened in World War II does not happen again. So now I want you to take note of the connection there. This organization was not established by one leader of a particular country, but leaders of different countries. They came together and formed this organization called the UN, which still exists even today. So now the main reason is to actually maintain peace across the world. So now in this case, there is what we call collaboration. There is what we call integration. Leaders of different countries are actually working together, which is globalization, because it does not only focus on one country but different countries. As much as there are different countries, but they are able to come together and work together to make sure that they have a positive influence across the world, which is maintaining peace and also making sure that human rights are respected. We have another example, which is the World Health Organization. World, not province, not country, but World Health Organization. We also have another example of the World Trade Organization, which shows what? Which shows collaboration, which shows that different countries are actually connecting. They are actually working together. As much as they are different countries, but they are able to work together. People are able to work together, which is an example of globalization. And lastly, we have technological globalization, which focuses on innovation, which focuses on innovation and also ideas of technology as well. So now this one says it focuses more on the spread and sharing of technology across the world, facilitating communication, innovation, and exchange of knowledge. We know that technology makes it possible for us to connect, even if we live in different countries, but we are able to connect through emails, we are able to connect through social media, we are able to connect through the internet as well, which is part of technology. Different gadgets are actually invented and actually spread throughout different countries so that they can be that connectivity between people and countries as well. Now the next part that I want us to actually focus on is the concepts, or rather the concepts that we will be actually mentioning more in this lesson. The first one we already know is globalization, which actually refers to the increasing connection, integration, collaboration, and interdependence of people and countries across the world. But it does not end with people and countries. It can also go to an extent of including governments of different countries collaborating and integrating, and it can also go to an extent of including businesses across the world as well, working together and collaborating as well. So that is known as globalization. So now it says here, globalization is the increasing connection and integration of people, not only people, businesses, and governments, particularly countries, worldwide. So it's that connection, that integration, that collaboration of governments, businesses, people, countries is known as globalization. The spreading of ideas throughout the world, the sharing of technologies throughout the world, businesses expanding throughout the world is known as globalization. Now, I want us to also go back to this concept again. If you look at the concept, it's globalization. Now, it basically means that globalization comes from the word global. Now, global refers to the whole world. So now, hence we are saying it's the connection of countries and people throughout the whole world. Global, the whole world. Not specifically one country or one province, but the whole world. Concept number 2, international trade. So when countries around the world buy and sell goods to each other, that is known as international trade. Countries across the world buying and selling goods and services to each other, that is known as international trade. And then concept number 3 is developing countries. These are also known as third world countries. These are also known as the South, because most of them are actually situated in the southern hemisphere. Now it says here, countries with lower standard of living, mostly facing what? Challenges such as poverty and underdevelopment. Now, these countries most of the time are not industrialized. The economy is more on agriculture than industrialization. Those countries are known as developing countries or third world countries or the South. So why the South is because most of them are situated in the southern hemisphere. And then concept number 4 is developed countries, which is the opposite of developing countries. Now, these are countries with high standard. Remember, developing countries, these are countries with a lower standard of living, mostly facing challenges such as what? Such as poverty. But now, developed countries, like I've indicated, is the opposite of developing countries. These are countries with what? With high. Remember, lower, high standard of living, mostly industrialized. So now they have shifted from agricultural economy to the one that is more industrialized, where now they focus more on manufacturing goods. Now, I'm sure now you are asking yourself to say, what makes globalization possible? What increases globalization? So I want you to think before we move on to the next slide, which is what we will be focusing on in the next slide. But before we move on, I want you to answer this simple question to say, as much as we live in different countries, what makes it possible for us to connect? because there's a distance between these countries. But at the end of the day, we are still able to connect. We are still able to work together. Globalization is still able to take place. What makes it possible for globalization to take place? I want you to think for just 1 minute. Come up with different answers or different facts or different factors that contribute to globalization. So I want you to just think of different factors that contribute to globalization. What makes globalization possible? You have just 1 minute to think of the ideas or the answers. You can just list them down on paper, few of them, think of them. What is it that makes us to be able to connect and collaborate, even if there is a distance between our countries? Welcome back, learners. Hope you had enough time to think of the factors that contribute to globalization. So now let us go through them together. The first one is trade, where now countries are actually focusing on imports and exports, where they are actually exchanging goods and services. Now that exchange, the exchanging of goods and services actually keep them connected. So it makes the connection possible, it makes the interdependence possible. Because remember, when countries are actually exchanging goods and services, it basically means that they are depending on one another. Remember the example that I gave you of buying clothes? To say now, it means countries can be able to have what they don't manufacture by actually buying from other countries. So that keeps the connection going. That increases the connection between countries. Now we also have multinational companies, also known as multinational corporations. These are international countries or big countries that are actually expanding to other countries in order to generate more profit. So in this case, for example, we have Coca-Cola, which originates in USA or in the United States. Now, Coca-Cola originates in the United States, but it expanded to other countries as well. So now that expansion actually increases the connection between countries. So now big companies also investing in other countries, particularly developing countries, actually keeps the connection going. It increases globalization. So in this case, when we talk about, remember, multinational companies, we are actually talking about those companies that are expanding to other countries or other nations as well. So in this case, they are able to actually provide job opportunities, but we will discuss that in the next slide. But just note that multinational companies actually increases globalization. Improved transport and infrastructure as well makes globalization possible. Now remember, through transport, people can be able to travel across the world and meet different people across the world. So now that keeps people across the world connected, which is globalization. And through transport as well, goods and services are being transported from one country to another, which also increases globalization. So what you need to bear in mind again is to say improved transport and infrastructure actually increases globalization. And we also have technology as well. Different technologies actually increases globalization as well. We have communication technologies such as the internet, which actually makes people to share the information and also ideas as well. It does not only end with the internet. We also have our cell phones, in which we can be able to use to call people across the world. So now those technologies actually keep the connection going. So when we talk about what causes globalization or what increases globalization, we should know trade, countries trading, selling goods and services to each other, multinational companies or multinational corporations such as Coca-Cola, such as your McDonald's, such as Apple. Those companies have expanded to other countries, including developing countries, which actually keeps the connection going. It increases the connection. Transport makes globalization possible as well. And lastly, technology. Now, learners, what you need to understand is that as much as these factors makes globalization possible, there are different perspectives towards globalization. There are those people who actually think globalization is a good thing, who actually think that it's a good thing that as much as we live in different countries, we are able to connect and work together, share ideas, share services, and share goods as well. So they actually believe that indeed globalization is a good thing. But there are those who are actually against globalization as well, who believe that globalization is not a good thing for the world. But they also have their reasons. Both these groups have their reasons. Those who are in support of globalization have their own reasons. They are able to justify. And those who are against globalization as well, they are able to justify. Remember, when we were discussing the lesson objectives, I've indicated that we are going to be actually discussing what globalization is, of which I think we have discussed. And we have even went to an extent of actually discussing factors that actually makes globalization possible. And then the next bullet point was to actually discuss the impact of globalization, both the negative and the positive on different countries across the world. And when we talk about different countries, we are referring to developing countries and developed countries. So in the next slide, we are going to be looking at the positive impact of globalization. But now, before we move on again to the next slide, I want you to think, why is globalization a good thing for people and countries around the world? What are the benefits of globalization? Now remember, now we are just focusing on the positive impact. Why do you think globalization is a good thing? Why is it good that as people across the world, as governments, as businesses, it's a good thing that we are well connected? What are the benefits? Think of them. You have 2 minutes. Right. I hope you managed to think of the positive impact of globalization. So now let us go through some of the points here. The first one will be creating job opportunities. Now remember those in multinational companies or multinational corporations, which are also known as the MNCs. Multinational corporations. So they are able to create jobs, particularly in developing countries. Remember, these companies are expanding. These companies are actually expanding to other countries as well. And the reason is they want to actually generate more profit. So in this case, when they expand, when they are being established in other countries, they are able to create jobs. It means they are able to employ people. So now them creating jobs actually leads to or results in what? Economic growth. Because now it means the standard of living in that country will be improved and poverty will also be reduced as well. So now it's a good thing. In this case, remember, we are focusing on the positive impact. What is good about globalization? How do countries actually benefit from globalization? In this case, developing countries do benefit in this case because more job opportunities are created. Not just job opportunities, people are actually able to improve on different skills because these companies also don't just provide jobs, they also provide certain skills. So in this case, it says companies expand to other countries, especially in developing countries, creating what? Creating opportunities and jobs. And for example, here we are referring to multinational corporations. Those countries that were actually, those countries that actually originate in other countries, but they decide to expand and establish branches in other countries as well. So for example, I gave you an example of Coca-Cola to say it originates in the United States. It's a company that was actually first established in the United States, but it expanded to other different countries, including South Africa as well. So now it provides what? It provides jobs. People are being hired or employed to work in those companies, which is a good thing. Now, these are some examples of multi-corporations or multinational companies. Example is Coca-Cola, McDonald's, I gave you Apple as one of them, and Google is one of them as well. So now it says here, globalization has resulted in the same companies or brands spreading across the world. It is being established in one country, but now it is expanding, which increases what? That connection. Which increases what? Globalization. Meaning now it does not only focus on one country, but now it is now spreading to other countries as well. So in that case, that is globalization. Global, which is whole world. It is now spreading to other countries. Now, it does not end there. What is also good about globalization is that people are able to have access to what? Different goods or variety of goods. They are able to have what? More choice. It gives people more choice. Meaning now their choice is not only limited to what is manufactured in their country. They are able to have goods that are being manufactured from other countries as well. Remember, I gave you an example of clothes. I can even give you an example of cars as well. We have German cars, we have Chinese cars that were being manufactured in other countries, but now we are able to drive them or buy them here in South Africa, which is globalization as well. So now their choice is not only limited, or people's choice is not only limited to what is being manufactured in their country. So it basically means that they have access to more products and services from different countries, which is a good thing. So globalization in this case is not a bad thing, because jobs are created and people are able to have access to variety of goods and services. Their choice is not limited. One other thing is communication. Now, globalization has actually brought people and countries together because they're able to share ideas and also to share information, which strengthen their what? Their relationships. So in this case, globalization is a good thing because we are able to keep in touch as people from different countries. Countries are able to share information. Countries are able to share ideas. So in this case, again, ideas are not only limited to what people from one particular country can think of, but ideas are being shared across the world. So in that case, it's a good thing. And then cultural understanding. Here we are being exposed to different cultures, and we end up understanding and tolerating each other as well. Because now when we visit different countries, we are being exposed to different cultures, not only when we visit, through the internet as well. We are able to learn about different cultures, and we end up understanding and also tolerating. So it says here, cultural understanding, which results to exposure to different cultures. We are being exposed to different cultures, and at the same time, this promotes what? Tolerance and understanding. Global cooperation as well. Countries work together on common issues such as disaster relief and human rights. Remember the example that I gave you of the UN, the example that I gave you of the World Health Organization. This is covered by this point to say countries are able to work together on common issues such as disaster relief and human rights. So now, the next slide will be focusing on the negative impact. Remember what I said? I said to you that there are different perspectives. So now, in this case, we have actually discussed why people are actually in favor of globalization. What are the benefits of globalization? Now, in the next slide, we are going to be focusing on the negative impact. What reasons do people give for being against globalization? Now, I want you to think again what makes people to be against globalization. How does globalization negatively affect countries, particularly developing countries? Now, let us go through the negative impact. The first one is competition. Local businesses now tend to actually compete with international companies. And you'd find that these companies or international companies are well resourced and they are able to promote their products very well. So in this case, they are able to attract more customers. So it basically means that now people would tend to be actually focusing more on international companies supporting them and turning against local businesses. So now in this case, local businesses end up closing and people who are employed in those local businesses end up losing their job. So now here it says competition. Local businesses struggle to compete with large international companies. So now if they struggle to compete with international companies, what happens? They have no choice but to close down. Now if they close, it means people lose their what? Their job. Now this leads to what? To unemployment. Now people become unemployed. So now that is one of the reasons why people are against globalization, to say local businesses are actually struggling to compete with international companies who have resources. So in that case, they end up closing. And now those that are being employed in large international companies, most of them are given low wages. So they are not getting paid enough. So in that case, again, that is one of the reasons why they are against globalization. And they're also saying globalization also leads to climate change. How? Deforestation and pollution increases due to what? Due to industrialization and trade. So now, if there is a need for more wood, more trees would be cut down in order to provide more wood that could be used to manufacture, for example, in the industries, to manufacture furniture. So in that case, the cutting down of trees is known as deforestation. So now in that case, that it would lead to what? To climate change. So in that, another one is resource exploitation. Now, if there is a need for more goods to be manufactured in the industries or in the factories or big factories, now it means more natural resources would be needed. So in this case, it says resource exploitation. Companies may overuse natural resources to meet global demands. If there is a need for a particular product or different goods across the world, global, if there is a need for a particular product to be manufactured, to actually make sure that it is available throughout the world or across the globe, then it means more natural resources would be needed. That would lead to resource exploitation, which is definitely not good for the environment, which is also not good for the country as well, because it means those resources would be depleted. It means they are not going to have enough in future. So now those who are against globalization are actually also giving these reasons to say it leads to resource exploitation, which actually results in more natural resources being used to meet global demands. And then the other one is local culture and identity being lost. Why? It's because now, remember, cultures are being promoted through technologies such as the internet, where now people across the country, across the world are showing up their fashion style, their music, their food as well. So now this actually results in the what? The identity or the culture of a particular country being lost, as they tend to copy the one that is being promoted on the internet. So in this case, it says same clothes across the world, music, food, and entertainment across the globe. So in this case, now it means one particular country would not have its own culture, its own identity, but everybody or all the countries across the world will be having similar culture and identity as well. Why? Because people end up wearing the same clothes, listening to the same music, eating the same food across the world. So they are arguing to say cultures and identities are being lost. Lastly, the spread of diseases. Now, as we connect, as we travel, it means diseases can also easily spread from one country to another. And one example is COVID-19, which spread throughout the world. Why? It's because people were traveling across the world due to improved transport. Some were using planes. Now, as they were moving from one country to another, they were actually spreading COVID-19, which ended up being a pandemic for the whole world. So now it says diseases spread from one country to another easily. So now these are the reasons why they are against globalization. Now, coming to today's activity, remember each and every question has a key question. Now, the key question here is what impact? Remember, we have discussed the positive and the negative impact of globalization. Now, here the key question is what impact did globalization have on South Africa? So now the focus here is on South Africa, to be specific. So in this case, it means the whole question paper will be focusing on the impact of globalization on South Africa. So now you are going to go through the source, which is source 3A. Why 3A? Why does the number, the source number starts with 3? It's because this question is always question 3 of paper 2. It will never be a question 1. It will never be a question 2. It will always be question 3. Hence, all the questions or the question number will always start with the number 3 to indicate that this is always question 3. So now you'll go through the source and answer the questions. Now, learners, you have 10 minutes to go through the source and answer the questions. Now, as you are analyzing the source, don't forget to start with the contextualization. Remember, the contextualization of the source is the one that tells you what the source is all about. For example, here it says the source below describes the process of globalization. So it means in this source you are going to read about the process of globalization. So go through the source and answer the questions. There are 4 questions for source 3A, which is 3.1.1 up until 3.1.4. So you have 10 minutes to answer the questions. 3.1.1, define the term globalization in your own words. Now remember, learners, the examiner is not going to ask you to define a concept that is not in the source. So in this case, The concept is there. First sentence of the source, it says globalization is a process. You are actually being given the definition for globalization. So now the question is, every time when you are being asked to define a concept, that concept will actually be in the source. You are not going to be asked to define any concept that is not discussed in the source. So if you are not sure how to answer the question, or if you are clueless what the concept is all about, go through the source. You might get some idea on what to say when you answer the question. Now it says define the concept in your own words, 1 times 2. Now here are the possible answers. Globalization describes the way in which people, ideas, and goods move around the world more quickly and cheaper than before. So in this case, again, I'm sure you can see the connection here. Around the world, across the world, between different countries. Now you can also say it's a system of interaction among the countries of the world in order to develop a global economy. Now you can also give the one that we discussed in the previous slide to say it's the increasing connection and integration of people and countries across the world. That is globalization. Now it says give 2 examples in the source of the effects that globalization had in various societies across the world. Now this is an extraction. It says according to the source, or examples in the source. Now the first one, if you go to the source, it's there. It says globalization is a process of interaction and integration among people, companies, and governments of different nations. A process driven by international trade and investment and aided by information technology. Now, remember the question. Now, here is the answer for that question. It says, this process has effects on environment, on culture, on political systems, on economic development and prosperity, which is wealth, and on human physical well-being in societies around the world. Effects on and in societies around the world. So if you are not sure, you look for keywords in the question that are similar to the one that are mentioned in the source. So that you can be able to see where to get the answer, since it's an extraction question. So now the first one would be environment, culture, political system, economic development, and prosperity. So, and then the last one is human physical well-being in societies. Now the mark allocation is 2 times 1. So you are only expected to give 2 answers here, but you are given 5. So it means any 2 of the 5 will be correct. And 3.1.3, according to the source again, why did many observers believe that countries have entered an uncertain phase in their economic development? Now it says list 3. And the mark allocation is also guiding you. So here are the answers: increased cross-border trade, increased investment and migration. Now remember, increased migration when people are actually moving to other countries for educational purposes or health purposes. So now that also increases globalization as well, because that movement of people to actually get education or for health purposes actually enables the connection between countries and people as well. And then the other one, foreign investment doubled. 3.1.4, using the information in the source and your own knowledge. Now this is not an extraction, it's an interpretation question. Comment on Thomas Friedman's claim that today globalization is further. So in this case, it has to do with distance. And also faster, which means quickly. Now it says comment on his claim. Now, here are the answers that you can give. Communication technology such as the internet has allowed, remember here the focus is on farther, which means distance, which has to do with distance, and the other one is faster, which has to do with being quicker. So now here it says communication technology which increases globalization, such as internet, has allowed people throughout the world to be in contact with each other all the time. So it means as much as they are far, which is farther or distance, they are able to connect, they are able to contact each other. This is what Friedman or Thomas Friedman mean. And then it says travel between countries has become cheaper and faster as well. The invention of planes, which enables people to travel across the world faster. And then the transfer of money, when you need to do some payments, there is no need for you to be going around. You can do it using technology, which makes it more easy and faster as well. So the transfer of money and trade is available all the time, which is 24/7 because of technology. So this is what he means. Now we are moving on to activity 2. Now you go through the source again. It says the source below explains the former Minister of Finance, Pravin Gordhan's view of globalization. Former Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan said globalization is one driver of higher inequality in countries such as South Africa. So it's basically saying it is creating a gap between the rich and the poor. It is actually increasing inequality because there are those who are able to afford due to maybe being employed, due to them having businesses, and there are those that don't actually have anything. Those that are not working, those that are being underpaid, they are working, but they are given low wages. So there will be that inequality. Now he's saying he was speaking at the University of Johannesburg Convocational Leadership Seminar on Monday, 15 May 2017 on economy, the global revolution, urbanization and digital transformation, and what it means for the South African economy. Gordhan highlighted that with an increase in the level of stratification, which is levels of order, the issue of inequality must be at the forefront of policies. He added that new forms of social safety nets and economic inclusion should be created to mitigate this social and economic division. It was the effects of globalization, such as the divergence of incomes and the loss of jobs because of technological advances, that contributed to greater inequality in South Africa and other similar countries. There is a realization that globalization has actually resulted in winners and losers, and that greater note needs to be taken of who are the winners and what percentage of the population do they constitute and who are the losers, Gordhan said. Gordhan noted that globalization should bring about economic transformation that would benefit 55 million South Africans. He further stated that globalization will not do this. Instead, it has led to a flood of cheap foreign goods onto the South African market. This has contributed to many clothing and textile factories closing down, resulting in high level of unemployment, poverty, and social crisis. Remember what I indicated to say local markets or businesses are unable to compete with international companies, which actually result in them closing down, people losing their jobs, which increases what? Unemployment and poverty as well. I'm going to ask you to actually answer these 3 questions, which is 3.2.1 to 3.2.3. And the total is just 7 marks. You have 10 minutes to answer the questions. Learners, hope you had enough time to answer the questions. Now let us move on to the answers. One, according to the source, was Gordon's view of globalization. According to the source, meaning it's an extraction, you just extract. This is his view. Globalization is one driver of higher inequality in countries such as South Africa. 3.2.2. Identify two strategies in the source that Gordon suggested would help South Africans to deal with the social and economic division created by globalization. The issue of inequality must be at the forefront of policies. That is what he suggested. New forms of social safety nets is also one of the suggestion. And then lastly, economic inclusion should be created. So basically, these are his three suggestions. But now remember the mark allocation, 2 times 1. So basically, any 2 of the 3 will be correct. Explain how globalization has contributed to increasing level of inequality in South Africa is an interpretation question. The gap between wages of low-skilled and skilled workers is huge, meaning those who are skilled are paid more than those who are low-skilled, which creates what? Inequality. Skilled workers normally have better benefits than low-skilled workers, which results in inequality. Low-skilled workers tend to be more vulnerable to unemployment than skilled workers. So now if some are employed and some are not, this results in inequality. The rich are able to use technology to increase their profits, and that enrich them more than low-skilled workers. So now this is how globalization actually creates what, or increases inequality. Summary, we are actually reflecting on what we have discussed. We have discussed the meaning of globalization. By now, you should know that it has to do with the connection, the integration and interdependence of countries and people around the world. We have also discussed factors that increases globalization, which is trade, improved transport, technology, and multinational companies known as your MNCs. And we have also discussed the negative and positive impact of globalization. So we have reached the end of the lesson. Thank you for watching this lesson. See you next time. Bye.